Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Next FM. My name is Ryan. This is,
Dan Guswin. And
and
Ryan,
yeah,
did you hear? Code Rabbit is so cracked it caught environment variables leaking in my PR.
re- really, come on now. I don't know if I should be more impressed with CodeRabbit or more disappointed with you leaking
All right,
environment variables in your PR.
listen. I might have vibe coded a little bit too hard, but it caught the thing, so I think it's pretty cool.
It did catch the thing. Well, I'm thankful that we have it, and you should also get CodeRabbit today at devlink.run/CodeRabbit. It's free for all open source repos. But on to our special guest who is sitting there so lovely, Jeff Everhart. How are you doing today, Jeff?
Doing excellent. Thanks for having me, y'all. Happy to be here.
Of course. So, Jeff, give us the 2-minute origin story.
Ooh, the 2-minute origin story. Should I go in chronological order or reverse chronological order? That's
Please, chronological. We need
chronological.
Need to keep my mind
all the
going.
way. You're right. Okay. So all the way chronological. I guess like this all kind of starts for me back in college. I went to school to be an English teacher and graduated at a like really weird time of the year in December for English teacher, right? Like, because I'm not going to get a job as an English teacher. So decided to stick around my university and like I was going to go start this master's program and kind of like got into WordPress. And from there, just sort of like spitball that into more technology stuff. I got an assistantship with that same university working in like the educational technology field. This was back when online learning was like kind of coming into, a big thing and nobody really knew how to handle any of this tech stuff. So I got in there, started doing stuff in the LMS, did that while I worked on my master's and kind of somewhere along there realized like, hey, I didn't really know, I wasn't a computer science major, didn't really know anything about development, but like sort of realized like, hey, this is really powerful and I can just make stuff if I have the, the knowledge and the idea. And so convinced the people who were like supervising my master's thesis that, hey, you should just like let me make a website. And so I did that and like made this whole website about American romanticism, pushed it out to all these like kids in, high school and middle school who needed like open educational resources, which was like a big thing at the time. Did that for a couple of years, stuck around the educational technology sector, continue kind of like working on my dev skills on the side until we had this learning management system called Canvas. And I was like using REST APIs and stuff to like build all these internal tools. And I'd go around to these education conferences and show them off. And I'd have people from like the software development units at universities coming and being like, hey man, like, can I get your code? And all of a sudden I'm like, well, if these people want my code, like to help their own jobs, like I could probably go get a job doing this, and kind of like ejected from there into just, like a proper dev role. And so I worked at a couple of different companies doing that. I worked at an insurance company for a while, worked for a real estate startup, and then kind of made my way back into the higher ed space as a developer, where I got a job at kind of like an innovation lab. And our role there was to really like take all these ideas that the faculty members had, maybe they had grant money or something like that, and, help them develop this like technology aspect to it. And so like a couple examples there, like somebody got an, like an NIH grant to do a vaping database back when like the vaping scare happened, where like, so we helped them prototype a relational database with all these different vape flavors and all the different chemicals that were in them. So people could like filter and sort and figure out, if they were safe or not. So got to work on a lot of cool projects like that. Ended up supervising a couple of developers at that same job. And then somewhere around that time, after I've been doing the run of the mill kind of like dev stuff for a while, sort of found this field developer relations. Like I realized, hey, there are all these people out there that are getting paid to like teach and write. And that was basically like what I was doing in my free time at the time. Like it was what I was doing for fun. So, got a dev role at a company called WP Engine. Like I'd done a lot of work in the WordPress space. And at that time, the WordPress REST API had come out. There was this plugin called WP GraphQL, and like a lot of people who were in the like Jamstack space had started using WordPress as a headless CMS. And I kind of was like, hey, this is great. Like I get to use all these really cool front end tools, and WordPress is a CMS that everybody knows. It's really easy to host. And so a lot of our projects ended up being some variation of headless WordPress. And WP Engine had just created like a front end hosting platform, kind of like your Vercel or your Netlify, because they realized they were losing like a lot of business to, people going and hosting the front end of these sites on Vercel or Netlify. And so they spun that up. I worked there for about 2 years doing that. And then I made my way to a company called Knock, where we're notification infrastructure. And I was like the first DevRel hire, Series A startup. I was like employee 12, and I've been there for about 2 years, and we've been just making it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the 2 minutes on that, like probably over, but
A little bit over, but man, you captured a lot of ground. I'm very impressed. And it's interesting. Ryan can attest to this too. Like, you really very much fall into this pattern. Also, how DevRels just naturally discover themselves in this line of work.
for sure, for sure.
It's like I can just do this. Like,
Yeah.
work. That's cool.
And I think in so many cases too, you find that people like who at least really like doing the DevRel work, were like doing DevRel work just unpaid somewhere before that they get paid to do it. And so like that's kind of what I was doing on my blog. Like obviously I'd write and speak about WordPress and JavaScript and stuff like that. I ended up doing a lot of like data visualization and kind of GIS stuff when I was at the university. So like always talking about mapping and things like that. And then like Google Apps Script too. Like, so there were all these like sort of niches where I was already like doing DevRel stuff, just not really being on payroll for it. So I don't know. It's really cool. I think how that works out for folks.
Since you said that you were into GIS stuff, were you big into drone deploy?
Drone deploy? Is that a specific thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
no.
It's a GIS visualization 3D software. I'm interested to see because because I'm still in college. Last year, we had a like some GIS class, and we were big into drone deploy.
Oh, nice.
But I can attest to all of the stuff with Canvas. I have worked. They lock everything down for students so much from like the API side, because I'm like, I don't want to go to Canvas to pull my stuff. I just want all new assignments to be thrown to like a Slack repo or a Slack channel, because I work out of Slack. Like, come on. Yeah, I don't want to mess with anything else. And they only give you like very limited stuff. You can't really set up like web hooks or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely not for students. No. That would have been like everybody I worked with's worst nightmare. Yeah. So if you want to talk nightmares, like let me talk about the higher ed CIO like conversations I've had. It's not fun.
I'm interested.
So what we did at that innovation lab was we also ran this like open multi-site WordPress instance, and at the end it had like 50,000 different student sites. And so the whole idea was like, hey, let's like, clearly this was like 2016, 2017 era, right? So it was a little while ago. And we were like, hey, the whole idea here, let's give these people like a digital identity. Let's get them publishing on the web. And like when they leave, they can take all this stuff with them, buy a domain name, like, all this really rational stuff. And people just hated it because it was like, it wasn't under the auspices of centralized IT. Like it wasn't branded. And I just had to have so many like weird conversations about that whole platform. And it was actually just like fantastic. Because imagine too, like having, 10,000 authors all go to write like their end of the term assignment on this blog at the same time. And we had like one beefy server to handle it all. So it was just really this sort of interesting foray into like DevOpsy sort of stuff for me, like lots of server management. And I learned a ton from it, but like also we had to deal with a bunch of like, what's it called? Digital Millennium. I can't remember the exact.
The Digital Millennium Act stuff.
Yeah. So like people would post stuff and like, I don't know, it'd be copyrighted, and we'd get all these takedown requests that I'd have to like fight people for and be like, this is fair use, get out of here. And like, I don't know. So it was always an interesting job.
Yeah, it's always interesting. And we'll jump on this little ed train just for a little bit to humor ourselves. Because especially since you've worked a little bit in that industry, not really as like a teacher, but sort of working along with it.
Well, and I actually did do that too for a period of time. So I was like an instructional designer, which is basically just like I help people build online courses. And then I also taught a couple of online English classes for a number of years too. So I've definitely been on both sides. Yeah, both sides of that. And then like clearly like that's the part I love about DevRel. It's like doing the teaching aspect of it. So sorry to interrupt you though.
No, that was good. What's interesting is like, for example, right now, like a lot of my classes, they just are so out of date. Now I'm obviously extremely skewed because I'm like on like teapot, like hype, like forefront of AI, on the forefront of that future. Like I know milliseconds when like a new AI model drops and how it sucks, but they are ages behind in everything.
Hard agree.
Yeah, because recently, let me see if I can find it while I talk. My school, instead of putting out like an AI class or something like that, they put out a no credit hour award that if you took like this online training course about AI, you get this like award that means nothing. And I'm like, nobody's going to do that because it's like nothing. So yeah, it's the just they're so far behind, and they're not even teaching like the valuable stuff. Like they're not even teaching, like I would love if like they were not, obviously not in programming 1 or 2, but like in programming 3 or some of the higher courses that do require programming, you to actually show you how to use cursor. Like here's tab, it will know what you're thinking somehow. Don't ask me how.
Yeah. No, I mean, hard agree on all that. I think in that period where I worked in the innovation lab, there were a couple of people that I collaborated with because I'd kind of like used basically, for lack of a better word, I'd used AWS way more than pretty much anybody in some of these departments. Like,
right.
And so they'd come and be like, well, hey, how do I make this more realistic? And so I'd kind of help them figure out ways that they could actually like use a bunch of these AWS credits that they've been given to like make some of the assignments just feel more comparable to what you'd get in industry.
Right.
And like that's awesome. Like kudos to them. Like there was also like a horror story about somebody spinning up just like, I don't know, one of the RX XL databases that cost like $300 a minute to run. And this, MBA student wound up with like a $10,000 bill after a month. And it was just, typical stuff, but
yeah, it's interesting, but I could talk about like the failures of the education system after being exposed to actual industry work. It's so funny. I'm just like,
it is. And even now, I mean, to think about that, like, I mean, similar to you, like I'm like kind of chronically online. Like my whole job is to just, hey, think about the future of development work and like how that's going to impact, our business. And I feel behind. So like, I don't know how these people would possibly keep up.
I will say though, before we move on from the topic, there might be correlation between people deciding to be DevRels and people seeing the lapse in the education system in the way how fast it is catching up with the technology field. Because I feel like myself, yourself, and Ryan, we all here share this passion for, education system, it's too slow for technology. And that's why we ended up in this field in the first place, maybe.
Well, I just ended up here because I realized that I could get paid for making content and not having to be like a YouTuber, like a traditional YouTuber. Yeah, because it's like, don't get me, love a good YouTuber, but like I'm much like my DevRel gig. I'll shill a company and show off its great attributes and stuff like that if I can get paid. But no, it's also fun to educate people of like why. Because I feel like in school it's a lot of just how, and there's no why do we do this. Like in my intrusion detection class right now, we're learning Nmap, and he's just telling us commands. And I'm like, yes, I know these commands, but you're going to make it so that way everyone remembers these for the exam if you show them why you need this. Why are we doing a stealth scan? Why are we doing this and that and the other? And he's just not doing any of that. And it's just like, ugh, I just wish you would show that.
Yeah, just make it even this much experiential and not just regurgitate all these facts.
For sure. Anyway, bringing it back to the program. You started out in WordPress, right? And you mentioned at some point in the past that you landed in like headless WordPress space, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that was really my first exposure to web development and all. It was like, I think I had a class where we ended up making like a WordPress blog, and I wrote this really lame English blog about like structural linguistics or something. And then from there was like, just got more curious about it and started digging into the internals, and then just kind of like through the path, ended up in headless WordPress.
That is interesting because it's not how WordPress is traditionally ran, like majority of the websites out there. How'd you end up in the headless pattern space?
I think for us, it was always about the end product and like what we could produce. And the more deeply I learned JavaScript, and I think at the time I was like really into Vue, and like so the more I learned there, that was kind of like, I don't know, how you create really nice front end experiences. And so if you're doing kind of like innovative stuff on the web, you kind of need a lot of JavaScript, or you definitely did at the time. Like we didn't have, I think, like things like view transitions like we do now. Like the browser APIs just weren't as good. And so the more I started learning into like leaning into the traditional JavaScript frameworks, like I was like really productive there, but I'd still need these ways to get data from people. And in those cases, like a lot of it was just a speed thing where, hey, we already had this multi-site WordPress install. Like it was really easy for us to use some of the WordPress data modeling plugins like ACF to go in and be like, okay, well, here are all my different entity types. Here are all the different fields that these people can use to populate the content. And it like gives them a really nice, easy to understand interface. And then I just get the data and I can do whatever I want with it. And I think that's honestly how a lot of people get into it and end up using it that way. It's like what they want to create just is a little bit too unique for, I guess, like the traditional WordPress theming, which was at the time really PHP driven. Right. Now it's a little bit more like block based and you have a little bit more JavaScript stuff. But, at that time, it was pretty much PHP. So.
Right on. Do you believe it is still a viable strategy to build WordPress in headless mode?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's as viable as any of the other headless CMSs. Like, so I don't know. I think that's maybe the question is like, do you feel like the headless CMS is useful or not? I'm asking the question, Mark.
I think it allows an extra level of maneuverability and customization. Because I use for Mandarin 3D, my other company. I have a lot of companies. I use headless Shopify with Next.js ecom that I'm going to be pushing out soon. And I like it because I get all of the Shopify features, but then I can apply my styles that isn't like an override per se, because who do I run into this with? With like Clerk and kind of like with Upload thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those services.
Yeah, for sure.
But they're not exactly headless. They ship their own components that you can like override styles with, but then you kind of like fall out of like your coding standards where it's like everything else is using Tailwind, but then here I'm using like 9-level deep object classes to override these specific things. So I think like full headless is nice. I personally enjoy it. And especially now with AI, if it's just basically scripting a front end and it's got like this sort of like MCP or something like that to sort of tell it where to connect. BaseHub does an amazing job with this. You can literally drop in to a new project, add the BaseHub MCP server, and literally just like say it, add a blog, and it will get the docs, it will get the implementation details and everything like that from BaseHub and pull it all together, style it. It will even I looked at the MCP like commands I think it has, and it was like, here's some suggested styling references to make it look like a normal blog. And it just ran that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And that's a nice part about headless where there's no strings attached, but like strings attached on the back end.
Yeah.
Thoughts.
And it's interesting you bring up ecom, because that's also kind of what we saw a lot, where it was like, hey, I want to use this ecom provider, but then I also just like I need a place for people to manage content and write blog posts. And like, that was the extent of the WordPress's role in like the headless CMS land. And I think we also saw it used a lot by like publishers, like really big online publications would tend to use it a lot. I think like, I want to say like Time Magazine might actually be headless WordPress. Deserto was one of the people that we worked with. And their whole idea was just like, hey, they obviously had all this content in WordPress. There is a lot of there are a lot of really good features when it comes to actually managing the content that WordPress provides, or you can, use with a plugin. And then obviously you can use Next.js or, whatever you want to make the front end of the site like as fast as you can. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely not what we have now.
It's definitely not cool. Like we can all admit that, right? Like nobody hears headless WordPress and they're like, oh yeah, this is the cool next thing, But I do think you'd be surprised, like, and I'll say that having worked at like a company who invested a lot of money in building a hosting platform just for that, like I think you would be surprised at how many sites under the hood are like doing something like that, and that the amount of people probably using headless WordPress, I would say, is still probably larger than everybody else. Maybe
I don't know. I've got to share this really quick. Let me monologue while I pull the screen up.
Oh yeah,
the Neon website is serverless WordPress. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I don't care.
Is it headless WordPress?
Yes, it is.
Are you serious?
It's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. Like NASA, we had people from NASA doing like there's so many things you wouldn't expect. And like at WP Engine, it was actually, so our strategy there was like basically like, how can we make this as pleasant as possible via open source tools? So that's awesome.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Like this right here, like obviously I know these are graphics, yes, but like it's people think like
and
WordPress,
that's my question. It's like how much of this would be editable? Like,
it's a good
now
point.
that I don't know if I can say, but like a lot.
Oh,
that is cool.
Okay. That is
really cool.
Yeah.
You can control a lot on that site.
Yeah.
I don't see why I wouldn't be able to say, but yeah, it's like you can customize like a bunch of that stuff. Obviously, like the hard baked graphics, you can't because you got to re-render those out in like AE.
Yeah.
But like most of like the text.
But could you you could go in and probably hot swap one of the graphics, like, and
probably
you could create an editing interface that looks similar. I don't know.
That's like the type of thing where it's like you got to implement headless correctly. If you just implement it where you have like title, subtitle, body, then it's gonna just absolutely die
for sure. And then I think also it's one of those things where like, and this is just my hot take on headless stuff in general, like it's kind of like just a compromise thing, and like everybody's a little bit unhappy, because like the marketing people want a little bit more control than they have. The dev people maybe wanted to use an entirely different technology altogether. So like, I don't know. That's kind of my hot take. Is it seemed like a lot of people ended up there as like a compromise between all these different parties on how they were going to ship this marketing site. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. Goose just sent me people still think that like WP Engine or like headless WordPress sites like still look like this. I know this is like usage statistics, but it's like people think like, oh, you're using WordPress? Yeah, it probably looks like this. Or what's the other one? It's the PHP blog site everybody used.
Oh,
PHP BB. Let me see if I can find that. That was a classic where that was just everybody. Yeah, for the forums. I remember I had one for myself.
I had one.
I was a little bit egotistical of myself. I think I called it like ryanblog.com or something like that. I wonder if that exists. Goose, you lead the conversation while I look into this.
Yeah, sure. I'm not at all surprised that PHP is still a very prevalent part of the worldwide traffic out there. I was just checking, and I just shared the link with Ryan over there. It's like 75% of the traffic worldwide right now.
Yeah.
So, people really underestimate how much is hosted on these CMS platforms, and the argument that you made, Jeff, about, people being unhappy and that's why these things exist. It's 100% correct. CMS only exists for the purpose of allowing non-technical people to actively edit the content on their websites, right? So it's marketing teams fighting for control over engineering teams, yada yada. So makes perfect sense.
Yep. That was interesting times. And so when I was at that role, like we had created a Next.js based framework called Faust that was like because there was also like a hard shift in WordPress history. Like I don't know how far we want to get down that rabbit hole, where they went more JavaScripty into this like block editor from like the traditional screens that like you might imagine looked a little bit like what Ryan showed a second ago. And so, I don't know. Interesting space. I haven't really touched WordPress. Like that was definitely my entry point, but I don't know. I don't know if y'all like caught all the drama about in the WordPress community a couple months ago, but like I'd kind of tuned out. And then that was like, I'm like, I'm not sure I want to come back here at all. So
yeah,
I need to redo the
impossible
personal
not
site.
to have heard. Impossible not to have heard.
Yeah, for
Everybody was
sure.
talking. Yeah,
Very sad way for
indeed.
that to not end, but I don't know,
Yeah.
start downward, I guess.
Yeah, but anyway, towards more positive topics.
Yes,
I am
please.
curious though. When you worked at WP Engine, you worked in a DevRel position also, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. That was my first role in DevRel.
Yeah. What was that like?
That was actually great. I mean, like I said, we had a really open source kind of like strategy behind that. So, we were working on that Next.js based framework that like basically you could just slap it on and like you'd get all your routes matched up to whatever pages you had in WordPress. Like there was like we did all of the plumbing work, so you could really come in and at that point just like, you know, define components that might map to blocks in WordPress, and like we tried to make that as turnkey as possible so that the experience was just like as pleasant as it could be coming to a CMS that's not meant to be a headless CMS. So I got to do a lot of open source work there. We started a Discord community specifically for people with headless WordPress, you know, got that up to like several thousand people. Did a lot of live events, and like that was really kind of like the core of what that DevRel team did, was just make a lot of content, like do a lot of community work, support these open source products. Like I also got to work with the developer of WP GraphQL. So if you wanted to, WordPress ships with the REST API, but if you wanted to have a GraphQL API, you know, he had a plugin and all these extensions to let you do that. And then while I was there, we actually also, WP Engine acquired ACF, which is called Advanced Custom Fields. And it was like the data modeling plugin, just tens of millions of people use it. And so to watch all of those kind of products come together to like support this vision of this headless hosting platform was kind of neat, because like ACF came in and they obviously, you could define custom fields, but it wasn't really like fully baked for entity modeling. And so we added this like custom post type functionality while I was there. And so just some really cool community stuff. WP Engine, I've got absolutely nothing poor to say about them. Fantastic company. And they really did, you know, a lot to like try and get that started. And it was like once WP Engine did it, every other major WordPress hosting company now has some sort of variation of that front end hosting platform too. So it's like, it's not like they were wrong in what, you know, they were investing in.
Right. I'm interested. Since you were kind of a REST API guy, because that's where you came from, like with the education system, Goose is going to get mad at me for going off of our topics. But what do you think of GraphQL? Because I personally don't like it. I kind of came from like the same sort of like REST API. You have an API, it sends a request, it's structured. It's not like a database query.
Yeah, I tried really hard to like GraphQL the entire time I was there. And like I sort of found moments where I was like, this is really nice. But most of the time, like I just wanted to get my data and like do the thing. And the GraphQL was not that, where like I'd have to kind of like write out this query. And you know, it might have made like more sense if I was doing different type of work, like a different type of development work. Like I can absolutely see, like we use GraphQL at Knock for part of our backend, and like I can see why they chose to use GraphQL, where I'm like, if I want to get a bunch of post data back from a WordPress database, like, and most of it is just like, you know, author name, HTML, publish date. Like, I don't know. It's kind of overkill sometimes. So I don't know. I'm kind of hit or miss. I probably wouldn't pick it if I had a choice. I'd pick REST.
Nice. Right. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, nowadays it makes a lot of sense. But you know, like a few years ago, GraphQL was the go-to option.
Yeah.
At some point. And it's interesting that you say that, actually, because I think WP GraphQL was also the go-to choice for building headless WordPress websites, from what I believe I heard.
It really was. Yeah. I mean, I think for sure there was definitely a community that coalesced around the WP GraphQL plugin in a way that didn't happen with the REST API, because that was kind of just like core. And then the other really kind of big thing in the headless WordPress community was like Gatsby, obviously, for a little while. And Gatsby had its own, I don't think they actually used WP GraphQL directly, I need to go back and look at that. I want to say it was like a slight different flavor of GraphQL, but they definitely use GraphQL. And so like in those sort of instances, I can see it because I also remember now, like I'm thinking back and I talked with a lot of like data federation startups at that point in time who were trying to like, you take this API and define it in GraphQL and you'd have this centralized source of data. And, you know, like in those instances, I can see that. But for like, I don't know, just shipping something, like in most cases, I think REST. I'm still choosing REST. I won't tell you what to do, but
good. I'm choosing REST all the time, all the time. Even if it adds a little bit more complexity, I'm like, I understand it, so I know it will work. None of this weird GraphQL stuff. Anyways, so we will migrate away from WP Engine, or else this will just be a WP Engine headless.
Yeah. Let's
GraphQL
on down the chronology here.
So now we're at knock, right?
Yes.
How do you decide? Because knock, when you joined knock, you said you were like employee 12.
Correct.
How do you decide what to focus on? Because DevRel at a small company, you're like, you could focus on SDKs, you could focus on like example apps, guides, or deep dives, migration playbooks. How do you focus on what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think being at an early stage startup, so there's two ways I'll answer this. Like, one, when I was hired, they had like, obviously like, we're going to hire you to, because we just believe in, you know, kind of like all the stuff you'll do across this entire surface area. But for them, it was really about like, hey, we need content. And so that was kind of like, I don't know, at least when I joined, the understanding like, hey, this is metric number one that we kind of want you to move, and we need, you know, people to know about us. We need people to you know, learn about what we can do. And I think all of those things, a bunch of those things that you mentioned are ways of doing that, right? Example apps, videos, things like that, SDKs. And I think it was kind of like tough to at first to like constrain myself and like reorient myself around what this organization needs at this time. Right. Because like coming from a company like WP Engine, it was massive, thousands of people. Like we were a DevRel team. I was actually in like product and engineering. And then, you know, obviously I was doing all this open source work and stuff like that. So I could like really get into the SDKs and, you know, contribute in that sort of product sense where it was like here, hey, you know, like, yes, this is a small company. You can contribute across all these things, but it was like, that was kind of like what we needed in the moment. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I approach that. And I think that's the other cool thing about working at a company of that size is like, even if you're hired to do kind of like one thing or like, you know, this is kind of like you're the primary thing that people want to see you move, there's always space for people who have agency to just kind of get out there and find something and improve it. And that's very much core to the way that everybody is at Knock. Like if something is broken, if some docs need updated, you know, if I catch something in an SDK, like, yeah, it's on me. I can go and fix it and nobody's going to ever say anything like, why did you do this? So it's what's cool about working at like a small company. And then on top of that, like with a bunch of high agency people.
Yeah. I think that's a big part, especially for like DevRel. It's like, you got to let them cook. You got to be like, hey, we get what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let you do your thing because I trust you and I believe you. Because there's a lot of companies that try to have like DevRel and they just like absolutely are trying to be way too controlling. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, yeah, do this, but whoa.
Yeah.
Not too much. Chill out.
Yeah, and it's very easy. I resonate with the let them cook thing because like I think it's because my name rhymes with chef, but that's like the nickname that I've been given in the company, and they'll just say let him cook, and you know I'll go and do something, and everybody will like it. So I think I resonate with that a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. So infrastructure. More specifically, notification infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah.
I've gotten a little taste of that with my product. You can see it down there. Inbound, it's like inbound email receiving. You guys are kind of like a theoretical abstraction layer above that where it's notifications, which is they need to be delivered. Deliverability is a massive part of that. how do you design that, and where do you think like teams fail first when they come like with this thing? Just like some personal stories that you might have
Oh
come
yeah. So
across
where do
as.
teams fail first? I think a lot of stuff ends up getting buried, and it's not clear to everybody in an organization how these different notification flows end up working. And so with Knock, like you said, we're notification infrastructure. So we're kind of like an abstraction layer on top of all of the different delivery providers. So, it's kind of like plug and play at that point, where if you want an SMS provider, you bring your Twilio API key, you get a Twilio channel. Email, you use resend, SES, whatever. And then you kind of like orchestrate these different steps using this workflow builder that we have. And so, kind of like the genesis of the company, and the other reason that I really resonated with this problem was like, there have been a couple times in my career where I've tried to build like notification features and they've just ended up like really, really crappy. So there was a point where I was working for this real estate startup and we were trying to do this like Zillow recently sold home email, exactly what that looks like. And, like we had this MLS integration and I wrote a cron job to kind of like, it was really all naive, right? Like I wrote a cron job to sort of loop through all the people, figure out what recently sold homes they might want to know about, send them an email. But like we didn't have preferences. So people started complaining that like, hey, I don't want to get this email, or I only want to get it so often. And there were just all of these like really nuanced problems that it was difficult to solve. And this was like a bootstrap startup. So it was like this real estate agent would literally like go sell a house and then come back and like take half that. And like, that was like the dev money for the next 2 months. So, it wasn't really like a situation where he was like, yeah, we can invest all this time. Let's build a preference center. Like, let's do all these things. And with Knock, you kind of get that out of the box. And our founders, Sam and Chris, worked at a company called Frame.io, and they had built and scaled that notification system. So that's like a kind of like a Google Docs for video editing platform, basically. So very collaborative, lots of notifications, and learned obviously like a lot of lessons about what a best in class notification system looks like. And so spun that out whenever that company got acquired by Adobe. So it was like really built out of this pain that they'd felt, I'd felt it at points in the past. And so I could resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's really, really underestimated how tough of a problem notifications are, especially like at a scale at which you deal with it. Do you happen to know like how many notifications you process on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I'd have to back into. I mean, we're hundreds of millions of notifications a month, billions of events.
Yeah.
And like the thing too that I like to talk about with Knock is because like so we're very like we've expanded the product, so I'd love to like dig into that a little bit because I think it's kind of an interesting take on the space. But I'll just stick with the just event-based workflow stuff for right now. So like obviously it's kind of like all event-based transactional. And then we have all these mechanisms that like basically make it so you don't get notifications. And like those are personally my favorite, right? So like batching, for example, right? If I have like a commenting workflow or something like that, like somebody leaves a string of comments on a Google Doc, do you really need a notification for every comment if they leave 5 in 5 minutes, or can we like capture all those, condense it into one? And so that's kind of what our workflow engine is doing for a lot of people. On the back end is like taking all these events, distilling them down into, more reasonable communications that the end user gets. And then like we've got preferences, a baked in preference system that you can, wire into, and then that's automatically applied. And it isn't something you have to think about. So you just trigger the workflow, and then Knock will automatically analyze the user's preferences to decide whether or not they should send it. Like, and then we've got like, and the other thing too I like about our platform, like, it's just how customizable it is in comparison to like a lot of the other things that are on the market. And there are a number of other products that are kind of like similar to what we do in the dev space. And then there's definitely like a bunch that are like more marketing adjacent, right?
Right.
But our philosophy is always like, if there's a way that we can like glaze over this, or there's a way we can expose a primitive that's customizable for a dev, like that's always the route we're going to take. And it's just like a really good philosophy because like people don't get backed into a corner. They can really build whatever they want. And so I don't know, there's just a lot of flexibility in it.
Yeah. I didn't notice that, or I just noticed that you guys, you don't ship your own email service, but you can, but like you let people integrate their own. two things on that. One, we need to get inbound on there. And secondly, that's really, really nice for two reasons. One, I definitely thought you were a competitor, so good. He's a friend now. But
solid.
More so, devs love to bring their own service and be like, I don't want to configure another thing. And that's really nice that you kind of have like this modularity, because I was working on something for inbound, like a little rabbit trail, to see if I could somehow set up with like SendBlue, like a way to send like an iMessage notification or something like that directly in inbound and receive it. Another thing, the SendBlue guys, if you listen to me here, if you ever put your email in the SendBlue like reach out to me metric, they will not stop calling you until you like block them on like 3 different phone numbers. Like I'll get like calls from like the founders. I assume it's the founders. It's like, hey Ryan, just wanted to see if you were still interested in SendBlue. Dude, I said no like 4 months ago. Why are you still calling me? So their dedication is insane. Anyways, I really like that like developer adaptation part where you can kind of just be like, oh, let me take that out and put this in. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge plus for developers. And if you use
Knock, like a lot of times you don't even really notice at that point, because like that's kind of like the idea, right? Is that we're just this abstraction layer on top of that. So you can use Resend, but like you can still store all your templates in Knock. You could use SendGrid, SES, whatever. And like we sort of like normalize all of that stuff as well behind the scenes. So like all of the engagement data, all of the sending data, we normalize for you across all the different channels. So you can get like this one pane of glass of how all of your different messaging flows are performing. And then like also on top of that, you know, I mean, yes, these services are mostly reliable, but sometimes they aren't. And so that's also kind of like the infrastructure layer that we provide as well. It's like we do all the automated retries if something fails, do exponential back off, you know, things like that. And then we provide a bunch of like out of the box components so that you can just ship faster. So like we got in-app feeds, we've got a bunch of stuff to connect to Slack, Microsoft Teams that you can just drop in your app, and kind of like takes like a week-long dev task to like a day or minutes now, I guess, if you just pipe it through Cursor.
Right.
Man.
Yeah.
What's the head count at Knock?
We are mid-20s. Are we counting Devons?
No. You're just 20-something people?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, but that's what
I'm saying. Like, I'm no lie. Knock is the most talent dense place I've ever worked, for real. And we've also like leaned very heavily into AI to just accelerate a lot of these practices. And so, you know, everybody on the team is really into it. And like that's, and like the other cool thing too that I'll say is like, so I don't know. It's kind of interesting with the shift to AI. Sorry, I don't know if y'all have other questions. I was about to go on.
No, this is great.
Into AI. Okay, cool. So like, I don't know. Like, did y'all watch the like Stack Blitz documentary that Supabase did? Yes, where it was just like the sort of like tech met the moment, right? Where they were like, we had like one bullet left and this was it. It was just so great. And I think about that a lot. And I sort of feel like there's an element to Knock being like that as well, because like we have all these really nice developer primitives that meet, and we have a management API. So like all the workflows, all the stuff you can do in the UI, you can do through the management API or the CLI with like JSON files basically, or like different templates. And so like there's this element, and this is sort of kind of like what we're cooking on right now, where, you know, you can come in and in natural language, fire up the MCP server and be like, hey, I want a welcome workflow for my, you know, for this use case. And it should send an email step, delay for 48 hours, then send a text message that says this. And like, you can prompt all of this stuff because everything is just under the hood, some, you know, code abstraction. So it's really easy to work with. And like, that's kind of like where we're moving in the future, in just one of the ways I guess we're moving in the future. So like,
yeah, no, I think it's a massive help, especially if you move more from dashboard driven design to like CDKs and infra driven as infra as code design. That helps AI iterate so much better, and it makes me happy to see like companies using AI correctly, because it's like, yes, AI shouldn't be used to like build your new feature. It should be used to cross-reference this client issue that has the most they're describing what's wrong in feelings and not actual like issue like prototypes, and the AI can kind of like catch that vibe and be like, oh, they're having this issue, which means I should probably check the authentication flow or something like that, and it can identify the issues like almost immediately. It's really really amazing.
Wait,
But
I
yeah,
thought you're supposed to use AI everywhere, like for everything, like run your relationship advice through it, taxes,
Yeah, I
everything.
was gonna
No?
say I wasn't supposed to show up to this call as an AI avatar.
Jeff's actually been AI
Yeah,
this entire time.
Oh
I
no.
got Cluely on my teleprompter. It's all good.
You know what's actually really funny? I used Cluely, like right now. I will say for meetings, it's so nice, especially as a DevRel, because 90% of meetings as a DevRel, you're not needed. And then like it's that 1% where it's like, hey, DevRel name, how should we do this correctly? And I just have like the Cluely transcript just like loaded up, and I just like quickly recall like the past 30 seconds of information, and then I present like the most. I don't use it to generate responses because that's like high noise, but I just use it for like the transcript feature. It's amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm using it for this call right now. Says the Cluely,
I
Cluely
was
avatar.
just joking, but maybe I'll go check it out after this.
It's. I will say it's nice, but it spams you more than.
Ooh, I don't like
the the meeting listener and note taking apps that whenever they detect you're in a meeting, there's like 30 different pop-ups. They're like, hi, you're in a meeting. Do you want to record this and AI transcribe it and then take actions? It's like, chill, bro. No need.
I don't know. I use Granola and it's like super chill. It just gives
Granola is really nice. I'm talking about like the other ones. Like I can't remember because I've rotted down my brain. But like,
or whatever.
Yeah. No, none of those. But Granola's chill. I love Granola.
Yeah.
But all right, let's move forward on the agenda and actually run a show and not just chat. Chatting's just more fun.
I thought chatting was the show.
It is.
Okay, I was gonna say
we need a little
my
bit of
bad.
structured content.
Yeah.
So this actually is a really good point for DevRels, but also like sort of founders and sort of developers that are working really hard on a product. How do you juggle personal and work life?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm like the wrong person to ask that sometimes. Like, because being a DevRel and like having the responsibility for like a community is pretty much for the last 4 years in both my roles been like the fact of the matter. And so I feel like a high need to get people unblocked quickly. And that doesn't always mean that I do the best job of separating, I don't know, work-life balance, like whatever you call it. I think what I've tried to do recently is to just like it might have actually been on Lee Rob's blog that I read this line, but it's like go hard and then go home or something like that, where it's just like I try to show up, work really hard, and like if I, come in and do something at night, like I don't know, take it easy. But
yeah, it's easy to forget that we're humans after all.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, especially with this line of work where it seemingly the set of responsibilities is endless and there's always something to work on. You got to know when to put a stop to it and like, relax.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you gotta be comfortable too, like sometimes like letting small fires burn. Like to your point, right? You gotta realize, okay, well, I can't do all of this stuff. So what is actually really that important? And so picking and choosing those things and like understanding that, okay, hey, this is a problem, but I don't need to fix it right now. I can wait. And like when another 2 people have this problem, then I'll loop back and then I'll say, hey, 3 people have had this problem. Like, can we do something about it? And that's a very different motion than just being very responsive and like reactive to every bit of feedback or, every like bug or I don't know, rough edge of a product.
You should set up a knock workflow for that batches the requests, and then once it hits like 3 or 4,
we need AI. We got to have an AI step in there to categorize it first,
right?
Yeah,
no, but I think that's valuable because it's like as DevRels, you feel like you don't work. Well, some weeks you definitely feel like you work, but most of the time when you're doing something you enjoy, you feel like you're not really working, and you're like, oh, I can just take on extra work because it doesn't feel like I'm working. But then it hits, and then you're like, I have 9 deliverables tomorrow. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And I feel like the context switching penalty for this job is extremely high, where it's just like spread out very thin across all different aspects of a company sometimes. Like, and that's ultimately usually what gets me is it's not like the volume of stuff that I'm being asked to do. It's that I'm doing like 3 or 4 different things, but they're all like totally different sides of the brain, right? So I'm trying to like be really creative, and I'm gonna like make a video over here, and what's a catchy thumbnail, and like how can I make people click this? And then you're on the other hand, I'm like, oh, let's talk about our pricing strategy, and you know, like things like that, and like how is this going to land with developers? And those are just 2 totally different brain hemispheres. It's
Right.
tough to reconcile.
Yeah.
Well, to all the DevRels out there, you know when to chill. Go chill if you need it.
Yeah.
And curious. So you've been in DevRel for like what, 5 years now?
I think about 4, probably 4 in December.
Yeah, 4. Has your perspective on like technology, software in general changed at all as you were operating in this field?
That's a good question. Yeah, for sure. I think I've found, and maybe this is because I get to do so much exploration as a part of my job, but I feel like everything is very cyclical. And like, this is going to sound kind of cliche, but like the fundamental things are always the most important when you approach a technology. So like, I've definitely gotten slower to pick stuff up to make sure that whatever thing I'm looking at actually has staying power, and staying power in the way that it's being represented as a part of the hype cycle. And so like, one of those things is like, I remember back like when Edge was like the rave, and like everybody was like, oh man, Edge this, Edge that. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, well, if your, you know, server's over here and your database is here, this isn't that great of an idea. Yeah. And like nobody really stopped to think about that until like 6 months into the hype cycle. And like by then I'd wasted a bunch of brain cells. And like there are still reasons why you would want stuff at the edge. I'm not saying that at all, but it was like to take a step back and say, what parts of this are still going to be here in 6 months or a year? And if like it's a substantial piece, then I'll invest time in it. And like, and then on the flip side, that also hasn't served me well in all the ways that it could, right? Because I feel like I sort of was definitely like an AI snob for a little bit, where I don't know that I adopted it as fast as I should have. And like, definitely remember sitting around in like 2022 being like, this isn't that great. This thing can't write a plugin. Like, and now there's, you know, I mean, Devin is just rocking it in our Slack workspace as we speak. So
yeah. AMP code's another crazy one that just kind of like works. Like obviously the traditional models and Cursor are fine, but like AMP just kind of, it's like another thing where you just give it a problem and it just figures it out. It costs a shit ton of money, but it works. It's like you've got a feature in like 5 minutes and it's like done. And it's like, holy cow, dude, this cost me $300, but it was like 4 days of work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good trade.
Yeah, so
that's a good trade.
It's interesting to see. I think we often are like, oh, AI hasn't really progressed that much. But when did ChatGPT originally launch? What was that, 2022?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's way better. It's just so much better than it was when it first came out. I just kind of wish I would have paid more attention in that first year or two. Because like I would say, you know, sometime late last year is when I realized, oh wow, you're wrong here, man. Like, you're fooling yourself. You're wrong. You need to invest in this. And then pretty much 2025, I've been like all in on everything that I can and just trying to learn all the different strategies and stuff. Same way I think a lot of other folks are.
Yeah,
right.
Very much correct. All right, we're going to switch to lightning round as we're approaching the end of the show. And we're going to ask you a series of quick questions. All right. So first one, what's your preferred editor and terminal of choice?
VS Code and iTerm.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm not fancy.
Why not Cursor?
Oh, well, I take that back. Yeah, you're right. Cursor. I mean, obviously Cursor. Cursor just looks exactly like my VS Code. So sometimes I forget that it's not VS Code. I take that back and I fail.
All right.
I fail the lightning round.
So second, if you could remove a library or a tool from the ecosystem, what would you remove?
I don't know. That's a great question. If I could remove a tool with no side effects,
Yeah, like I don't know, kill XML or something.
I don't know. It's just gonna say like all build steps.
Build steps.
Interesting. Like
Right.
build checks or just like all of the pre-commit stuff or all the pre-build stuff?
Yeah,
Or the
that one.
build stuff itself?
Yep.
Interesting.
I'm
Cool.
insane.
Cool. All right. What's the most underrated tech out there right now?
Oh wow, the most underrated tech out there. I wish y'all would have sent me these in advance. I'm like terrible. Underrated tech. I don't know. I can't say knock. That's obviously not allowed.
You can, hold on.
Hold on. No.
You can
I got
say
something.
knock
No,
if
I won't say
you give
knock.
us one cool thing about it of
that's
why it's
cheating.
underrated.
That's cheating. That's cheating. I guess like some of the stuff I would say underrated isn't really underrated. Like I was gonna say Veet. I really like Veet, even though I just said cancel all build steps.
Veet is popping up. I don't know, PHP.
Yeah, PHP I think is very underrated, but I wouldn't like. I don't know that I'd feel like I should rate it. If that makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's fine. We'll move on. What would you say was your most favorite bug you've ever fixed, if you've ever had an experience where you actually enjoyed it?
There was one insane bug that I remember. This is like way back in the day where SQL was like on in strict mode in the database while we were trying to do like a database migration. And it only like showed up when you were trying to save posts in this WordPress instance. And it was just like one of the hardest things to track down. So I'm going to say that one, just like database configs.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll get you.
Get you.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour, so you'll get your 1 minute to plug yourself. So where can people find you, find your work, and everything like that?
Yeah, cool. I'm obviously on all the socials. I'm on X. I think it's J_Everhart383. And then website jeffreyeverhart.com. Still rocking the old standard WordPress, not even headless WordPress. And then yeah, I'm out here just repping Knock hard. So if you got notification needs, check us out, knock.app. We're pretty much there to do all the channels and help you build a whole notification system without needing to build it.
Awesome. I'll let
Very cool.
Goose close us with our classic last
Yes,
question.
our sauce, our secret sauce.
Secret sauce.
All
I need
right.
to make this good because I feel terrible about my lightning round answers.
No, don't worry about it. You're gonna make it work. The last question is, if you could talk to a version of yourself from 10 years ago, what would be one piece of advice you would share?
Oh man, that's actually great. I think it's just be who you are. You have to be authentic, and if people don't like you, that's fine. And especially in I think the line of work we do, being authentic is really important. And a lot of times when you are trying to be authentic, it's really easy to second guess yourself, feel like you're not good enough, feel like you have imposter syndrome. So just keep at it, keep being you, and people will like you or they won't, but you'll be happy.
Wow, you totally freaking killed it, dude.
It's ironic because like I actually had some random thing where I was talking with somebody and I was like, 15-year-old Jeff would actually be pretty proud of where you are today. So I don't know. That's sort of why it was there.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's always good to be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sure our listeners got a ton of insight from this, but yeah, thanks for coming on, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you to Code Rabbit for sponsoring all live next steps, and thank you to our audience for tuning in and listening to us, whether that be live or on the recording. Yeah, thanks guys, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.